Hello, everyone. We are now on Module 1, PowerPoint 1.2. So this is the recording that goes with that particular PowerPoint. And we're going to start digging a little deeper into the concept of metrics. We're going to talk about ratings in this module, and impressions and all that, shares. Basically, we're going to go through some of the basic concepts. Now, remember that you have a modules media Bible that goes a little deeper also into all the terminology that you need to know in this particular early phase. So let's start with the basics. Again, we're gonna, lay the foundations and start building from there. Let's talk about what is media medium and what is a media vehicle. So media is the all-inclusive collective noun. Medium is one type and media vehicle is a single carrier. So for example, media in this case that you see here is print. The medium are magazines. Magazines are part of print, just like newspapers. And media vehicle is a specific title in this case. It could be a show, the name of a program if it's video. So the media vehicle in this case is Time Magazine, so that you get an idea of how this builds. So let's talk about building a media plan. We already started talking about what is a media plan in module 1.1. But remember that a media plan is a blueprint for future action. I spoke in the previous recording that, that we're always going to be working in the future. So this is what lays out what the strategy and the plan is. So remember that a media plan has to be, first of all, goal-oriented. Are we increasing shares? Are we increasing sales? Are we doing both? Raising awareness. It has to make sense. So it has to be effective and efficient. It has to be manageable because it has to be executed and flexible. It has to be focused. Remember that a media plan is developed before the media buy and focuses on the objectives and the outlined strategy. It has to be collaborative because remember that, and I spoke about this in the previous recording as well, that creative and media have to communicate. Why? Because the creatives are going to come up with ideas that maybe they live on certain platforms because that's how they created, and that has to be translated back and communicated back into the media department and the media planner, the media buyer, because they're the ones that have to go to market to negotiate those time or space. And it has to be audience focused. You have to know your audience. Again, in the last recording, I talked about the psychographics and demographic of media audience or an audience in general. So that relationship between audience and media is of fundamental importance to the plan development. So remember also that, in order for, the plan to be effective, it has to be measurable. And measuring means that you are going to have to interpret third-party syndicated, and this is part of why you're taking this class, third-party syndicated research that are companies that basically measure certain media. For example, television is synonymous with Nielsen. And in Latin America and other countries, is Nielsen Ibope or Kantar Ibope or Rentrack, which is one of the newer players. But it continues being Nielsen. Radio is Nielsen Audio. In print is the Alliance of Audited Media. In out-of-home is Geopath. In digital is Nielsen Digital, Comscore, Google Analytics. And then the client or the agency may develop their own KPIs. But these are, again, what they report, these third-party syndicated and industry accepted, which is very important because it has to be accepted in the industry as the currency on which to transact. So for example, the industry accepts the, you know, the heavyweight in the category, which is Nielsen, and Nielsen worldwide, by the way. So remember that it's interesting because what advertisers are buying are eyeballs and ears, and this is referred to as impressions. So every time you see this word impressions, what it means is opportunities to see. And also remember, which is very interesting, that you are literally buying exposure to that, the traffic to that website. You're buying exposure to that, you know, program. So that you're buying is potential exposure or opportunities to see, not actual exposure, meaning actual exposure to the commercial message. You're buying exposure to the content, not necessarily exposure to the ad. That's still in the potential exposure realm. Now, what happens is that in some KPIs, you get engagement, and engagement is not necessarily opportunity to see, but you're actually, that audience is actually engaging with the advertiser and the content, okay? So let's talk about the media in general, and we're gonna get into broadcast and TV. So you have three players in this game. You have the client or the advertiser, you have the agency, which is the media buyer, the media planner, the whole media department, and then you have the media rep, which is the media, or the media rep, which are the sellers. Remember that everyone wants to negotiate, to place those ads for that message to get to the audience. So in the middle, there's something called negotiation, but remember always that each party has a different agenda. The client basically approves a budget. They want that message to get to the audience. The agency wants the same thing that the client wants, but they want, they negotiate and try to buy lower so that they give themselves a little bit more cushion in when they're projecting audiences, so they can be a little bit more conservative if you're able to buy low and augment how many spots you can buy. And the media, they're not a nonprofit organization. They're there to make money. So their job is to be fair, but again, sell as high as possible because that's where their revenue comes. So always remember that in the middle you have the intent, the negotiation, but each party may have a different agenda. So in television and in broadcast in general, this includes radio, is measured in ratings. And the company that measures ratings, which is a percentage, you're going to see, I'm not going to get into the calculations because that's in a video specifically. But ratings is a percentage of the universe, meaning they may or may not be watching television, but the percentage of that population, that universe, that demographic that is basically tuned into the show. So it's a percentage of who's watching. So again, you have the advertiser, you have the audience, and you have the program source or the media. And we went already into the supply and demand of the business in module 1.1. So the more people that are exposed to that content, the better. The ratings are higher. And on the flip side, you've probably heard, when a program starts and is canceled, it's canceled for the most part because it doesn't have any, significant traction with the audience. So that's what mainly causes, cancellations. Like, mind you, and this makes it a little bit more dramatic, and by that I mean in linear television, which is when you're watching television, or even, in streaming. If a show doesn't get enough traction, meaning that the ratings are low, lower that goes into cancellation. And the dramatic statistic that I was talking about is that 80% at least of all new shows get canceled. So you can imagine the pressure. Now we talk about, what is a network, what is a station, and so that you have an idea, NBC Networks has 223 what is called affiliates and 11 what is called owned and operated stations. So you have NBC Network, if you watch NBC, and in each market or DMA, designated market area, which is the way Nielsen outlines markets, because that's the area that they measure. For example, in Miami could be Miami, or it is Miami Fort Lauderdale. That's a DMA or a designated market area, because when you see a rating come out of that market, it includes not only Miami, but it includes the city of Fort Lauderdale. That's their DMA that they measure. West Palm Beach, for example, is another DMA. So you may have you have affiliates, which means private ownership, and owned and operated means that they're owned and operated by the network. So the network owns it and the network operates it. Affiliates mean that they carry NBC programming, but they are owned by another private entity, not by NBC. They have an agreement with NBC for the programming. Hope this is clear. By the way, to the audience, they don't necessarily care if it's an O&O or an affiliate. All they tune in, and whatever their market is they're in, they want to watch NBC Network, is whatever the affiliate. And by the way, I want to make the distinction between broadcast networks and cable, because broadcast networks like NBC, like this example, they literally have a physical crew, a physical building, and an antenna that they cast over the DMA. So it has to reach as far as Fort Lauderdale, and it has to cover Dade County. It doesn't mean that there's some areas or pockets that the signal may be sketchy, but that means it has a physical tower that sends a signal to the area, and that's that. Now, in cable, you do not have that physical station. For example, CNN or Fox News, CNN or MSNBC or E Network or OWN or VH1, MTV, those are cable networks. While they may operate from a building, it doesn't mean that in every market they have an affiliate with the antenna. No, it means that all of that programming gets distributed through in the marketplace through cable. That does not necessarily mean that if you buy, let's say in the South Florida market where I'm at, it's Comcast, that you buy Comcast certain services of cable, and you get the bundle and you get NBC networks along with all the other cable networks. But technically it should mean that if I don't have Comcast and I put an antenna somewhere, I'm able to receive the broadcast networks over the air for free. That's why the FCC regulates broadcast television so closely, because we, the people, own the airwaves. So they're using our airwaves. So there's a far more regulation than cable. That's why you see in cable they curse. Maybe there's a little bit more nudity that you don't find in broadcast television, because there's a barrier to entry in cable, which means you have to pay in order to get access to that programming. Okay, so let's talk about Dayparts. So traditional television Dayparts are early morning. And again, every station has their own definitions of the hours that they consider early morning or daytime or early fringe or early news. they can control that. These are general guidelines. So when I say, or you hear early morning, it's typically between 5 a.m. or whenever they sign on, 4 a.m. to 9 a.m. Then you get the daytime. And daytime can be further divided into morning daytime and afternoon daytime. And so that period between afternoon daytime and early news, whenever that starts, that's what is called early fringe. I put here 3 to 5, but it could be 3 to 6. It could be 4 to 5 because the first newscast starts at 5. So again, station management defines the hours. These are general day parts. Then you get your early news. Then you get your prime access, which is that hour right after the news, right before prime time. Then you get your prime time. This is like, the money maker. In broadcast, it tends to be Monday through Saturday, 8 to 11, and then Sunday, 7 to 11. Late news, which is again right after prime, before late fringe, which are all your, late news, late talk shows, or whatever it is after the news. So you have late news, you have late fringe, and then you have your overnight programming. Again, these are general guidelines so that you have a sense of how a station calls their time frames. And again, this is a sample of WTVJ, which is the local NBC affiliate here in South Florida. And I put this together because it's interesting. There are certain day parts that is the networks. And the networks, for example, the Today Show, if you are familiar with NBC programming, the Today Show, which goes from 7 to 10, that's network. So network, you cannot touch that, right? Again, the station may have some units in there to sell, but the way that the network and the local affiliate basically negotiate is programming content is what brings audiences. So good quality network programming is key to the success of a station because that's what they sell is exposure to that content. So you have an NBC news, an NBC affiliate that in the morning 6 to 7, that's news. And again, this is the real deal. So that's local. Then you have Today's Show, which is from 7 to 10, that's network. Then you have a program called Access Daily from 11 to noon. That's something called syndication. Syndication is a marketplace like Dr. Phil or Oprah or the Ellen DeGeneres show or the Kelly Clarkson show. These types of shows are produced and then sold to different affiliates because, again, content is what brings audiences. So they're always on the lookout for good content and the way they program the station. So in this case, the 11 to noon show is syndication. Then you go into 12 noon to 1, that's local. Then 1 to 2 is a soap opera network. Then 2 to 4 is Kelly Clarkson and Ellen, that's syndication. Then from 4 to 6:30, like in this case, you may go from 2 to 4 that may be considered early fringe, and then you go into the news day part, which starts at 4, the first newscast. Then go from several iterations of local news into network news, NBC network news. Then they go back to local news at 7. Again, this is the station. Another station may do something different. Then 7:30 to 8, they have Access Hollywood, which is another syndication show. Then your prime time, 8 to 11. Then your late news, 11 to 11:30. Then your late shows, late talk shows at 11:35 to 1:35, and then you get into the overnight, and then you start all over again the next day. So this is an idea of how a station, which is a network affiliate, how they program their station. But remember that content is what brings eyeballs. So what's happening in the business in 2021? Well, the first thing, at the start of every year is the NATP conference, which is the National Association of Television Programming Executives, where the who's who comes in. This year, because of the pandemic, it was a virtual conference. And again, my spring class, I gave them a special rate to attend the conference. But this is a marketplace. This is the marketplace where people from the industry come to discuss whatever topic. So it's different sessions, different content. To me, it's like Christmas because I go every year. It's here in South Florida as well for the past like 10 years. But it's where content producers go to sell their content, and where stations go to discover and buy. And this is from people from all over the world. And then you have what is called the television upfronts and the Newfronts. And what the television upfronts are, and again, this is for networks, is a pre-sale period. You have a recording in the module, but it's a pre-sale period where the networks come in, present packages to advertisers, and they pre-buy that inventory a few months in advance, and then they start airing. So what are the pros of upfronts? Rates and guarantees that your spot is going to air in that program. But again, the drawback is that it's a big monetary commitment on behalf of the advertiser. And then it depends on the market conditions, because we talk about macroeconomics, supply and demand. If for some reason that year it happened to be a buyer's market because the supply outpaces the demand, then that upfront commitment in a television upfront may not be the best course of action. It's better to go into what is called the scatter market, which means I'm not bound by a contract for a bulk contract. I buy closer to airtime, and maybe they get it's still a network buy, but they get the rate at a lower rate because it's a buyer's market where the supply outnumbers the demand. So hopefully this is clear. Now there's another version going on, which is the digital Newfronts, where all these networks have a digital component. So they sell and they package and they bundle the television network inventory along with the digital offering for that particular network, and that's where the Newfronts come in. Now, I'm not gonna get into the actual calculation of the rating because you have a separate video for that. But let's talk about the terminology. Again, the terminology is, what is a rating? A rating is a percentage of the population or the market or the demographic or the universe tuned into the program. But that universe, and the universe is relative. If you're talking about adults 18 to 49 in the South Florida DMA, the universe are all the adults 18 to 49 in this DMA that may or may not be watching television. It's the universe. If I have X amount of percentage of that population tuned into this show, that's what the rating is. So it's eyeballs to the program divided by the universe, which may or may not be watching television, times 100. The impressions is the actual raw number. So the number that is like 3 million people. That 3 million is they are the impressions. Universe and population is that. Everything is relative. So if you're talking about adults 18 to 49 in the Miami-Fort Lauderdale DMA, that's your universe or your population. And then the demographic is whatever age, gender you're looking at. Women 18 to 49, men 25 to 54, teens 12 to 17, kids 6 to 11. That's your demo. And you have gross ratings. Gross rating is the addition of all the ratings, which is called GRPs. But suffice to say that when you're in a media conversation, GRPs is what you call when you're using household or homes as your demo. For everything else, is TRPs. It's the same thing, target rating points. But the difference between GRP and TRPs, even though it's the addition, the sum of all those ratings, but the only difference between a GRP and a TRP is in GRP, you're using homes as a demo, TRPs, you're using everything else. And then gross impressions is when you add all your impressions, regardless of whether they're target impressions or gross impressions, meaning homes, it's still gross impressions. So what are some of the challenges? The challenges here, is that Nielsen is trying to catch up to all this media fragmentation. TV is no longer a distinct medium. What we call TV is that apparatus by which you receive programming. But that apparatus called the television could become a laptop, could become, a digital device of any sort. So at some point in time, we have to measure exposure to everything, right? If you have to keep it consistent. You're going to find one of the articles, and there's a short video that talks about the challenges of measuring all the audiences when they come from different devices, because there are certain things that you have to keep constant when you intend to add impressions from a laptop and impressions, let's say, from a television. So we need good metrics. That's the bottom line. So Nielsen, as I was saying, Nielsen is the 100-pound gorilla in the industry of measuring audiences for, video. Again, they own radio. They bought everyone. And this is a global company. So Nielsen is that syndicated, industry accepted third party, measurement company that the whole industry has said, okay, we're going to transact based on Nielsen's read of that particular, programming. And the way that they assess is by impressions that are exposed to the program, and the rating, which is a percentage of eyeballs to the content divided by the universe times 100. And these are all Nielsen's clients, so you can, so Nielsen, basically, these are the companies that they measure, and they measure radio as well in ratings and impressions. So remember that an advertiser hires an ad agency. That ad agency analyzes the audience, they generate recommendations to the client, and then they go to market to purchase that programming, which is the perfect vehicle to reach that target audience. These are examples of demo breakdowns. The two most watched are adults 18 to 49 and adults 25 to 54. Remember, we talk about demographics. This is still the way that we transact and we negotiate. But remember that this behavior, these psychographics, have also a very, very important part when you're looking at audiences. So that is not a one-dimensional, it's a 360 degree of that audience. We still transact on age and gender. This is the formula for rating: impressions divided by the universe, demographic, population times 100. And we start with the calculation. Okay, so what I recommend, and again, I'm just scrolling very fast, is that when you get to this portion of the PowerPoint, just tune in to the the videos and the video lessons, because that's going to give you a really, really good overview and understanding of the actual calculation. And then, once you understand the context, then the numbers make sense. At least this is the way I look at it. Okay. And that is it, because now we're in full calculation. So anyway, hope this explanation was clear, and I'll see you in this next video PowerPoint let's recording.